Dear friends, it is my privilege. I am Sarah Sager, Cantor Laureate of Fairmont Temple here in Cleveland. It is my sad privilege to officiate at this service this afternoon. We gather to remember and to celebrate the life of one who filled our world with his love, his goodness, his extraordinary spirit, and outstanding example. In humility and gratitude, we turn to the wisdom of our tradition for comfort, for guidance, and for understanding. Throughout the centuries, whenever our people felt lost, adrift, bewildered, they would speak words of the Psalms, such as Esa Einai El Harim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and of earth. Shamayim varetz Ezri meim Adonai Osei Shamayim varetz Esainai El Harim Me'ayin Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace. For those of you for whom the 23rd Psalm is familiar, I invite you to join with me in its recitation. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When I die, remember me with a smile and laughter. If thoughts of me provoke no love, only sadness and tears, I ask that I be soon forgotten. Give what's left of me away to children and old ones who wait to die. And if you must cry, cry for your brother or sister who walks in grief beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. You can love me most by letting love live within the circle of your arms, embracing the frightened ones. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. My dear Janet, Harlan, Barry, Sarah, Brett, dear family, dear friends, among Hal Levey's most treasured legal possessions was a representation of the precept from our Torah, the Torah being the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. This precept comes from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 20. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, lema'an tichya. Justice, justice shall you pursue, in order that you may live and thrive and occupy the land that the eternal your God is giving you. This is an excerpt from Moses' final orations to the Israelite people at the end of their 40-year sojourn of wandering in the desert, in the wilderness. They are about to enter the promised land, and he knows he is about to die. He is anxious for the people to remember all that he has taught them of what God wants of them. In a faith that is established upon the absolute value and equality of every human being, the fair administration of justice is one of its fundamental principles. Hal Levey understood this principle with every fiber of his being, and the pursuit of justice for every person he met, for every person who sought his help, for every person who was referred to him by a friend, relative, or casual acquaintance, was his life's mission and his soul's passion. He personified this precept before he learned it. It was instinctive to him. It was a natural assumption. It was as basic and as innate as breathing. Every human being deserved the same access to remedy and restitution as every other. At another point in the Torah, we are taught that in a dispute, we may not favor the rich or favor the poor, that in all matters of judgment, we must act fairly. It is that idea that animates the image of justice as blind. Hal may not have been able to quote that principle, but he certainly lived it. It was basic to his view of life and his profound love of people. Justice, justice shall you pursue was a daily reality for him in his work, in his relationships, in his interactions, in his life. While the formation of any individual's character is ultimately a mystery, we might find hints and clues and possibilities for development in Hal's earliest years. As the second child of Ralph and Helen Levey, Hal was 5 years younger than older sister Iris. He was born in the largely immigrant, upwardly mobile, multifaceted, colorful, sometimes threatening neighborhood of Glenville. Hal spoke vividly of the conflicts between Jewish and non-Jewish gangs, and even after moving to Cleveland Heights for junior high and high school, Hal's enduring memories of his childhood and adolescence was as an unpopular nerd without friends. We might hypothesize that his sense of being an outsider may have been fueled, at least in part, by the dominant personality of his father, Ralph. We do not know why Ralph left Poland alone, probably at some point during the 1920s. All we know is that he subsequently lost his entire family during the Holocaust. As was typical of survivors, he never spoke about any of his earliest history or the loss of his family. We can only surmise the courage and strength of will that motivated him to leave in the first place, and the possibility of survivor's guilt in the aftermath of his overwhelming losses. What we do know is that he could be difficult, argumentative, especially with his eldest child, Iris, and wanted only to assimilate into this country and to move forward into the future without looking back. We also know that Hal did whatever he could to help immigrants become naturalized citizens by getting their papers in order and approved. Hal knew the pain of loss due to closed borders. He also witnessed the pain of emotional instability and trauma and the human cost of not knowing where to go for help. Hal spent his life helping others in any way that he could. Even when it wasn't his area of expertise, if an individual sought his assistance, he would research the issue, give his best advice, or provide his best service to put the person on the right path, and then would find someone with greater expertise to take over. Even when he thought he was involved in a lost cause, if he perceived a need, if someone was wronged, frightened, isolated, or disadvantaged, he could not walk away. He had to help. In another iteration of our Torah's teaching, he could not turn away from a stranger because through his family and their history, he knew the heart of the stranger. He also began to know his own heart as he became increasingly adept socially and found that he not only had friends, he loved people and had a talent for bringing them together. For meals, for holidays, for parties. He loved to go out to eat and would establish relationships with the waitstaff as he learned about their families, their experiences, their concerns. He became a part of their lives and would be there for them in times of loss, difficulty, and celebration. It was part of what made him such a well-known figure in this community. Wherever he went, people knew him and embraced him. When Hal and Janet entertained, they loved to open their home to friends and hosted fabulous parties. While Janet modestly consigned herself to the kitchen, I don't entirely believe that, Hal was the welcoming host who loved to help set up the house with tables and chairs and decorations, especially for the creatively themed parties that featured murder mysteries or Italian ambiance. As Janet acknowledged, we had a blissful life in the context of making this world a better, fairer, more loving, and laughing place. Hal discovered his love of music fairly early on. He played the clarinet in junior high and in the marching band of Heights High. He gave up the clarinet, but not his love of music, as he embraced everything from classical to pop and opera to musicals. He was a fervent supporter of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a regular attendee with Janet and his children of Playhouse Square, and he and Janet especially discovered the joy of online music courses and outdoor concerts during this pandemic. When Harlan, Barry, and Sarah were growing up, he loved to hear any one of them play piano, which would promptly entice him to take a nap, calmed and soothed by their presence and their playing. He introduced them all to the joys of Broadway musicals and shows, although Harlan was more interested in sports, and took Barry to the first national tour of Sondheim's Into the Woods, which blew his mind and helped inspire his writing for the theater. Hal eventually gave Harlan his clarinet when he moved to Belgium and found his way to becoming editor of an arts magazine and with fiancée Winnie Kwok to own and manage their own art gallery, Hal Levey Projects. When Harlan and Winnie recently opened a new gallery, Hal avidly followed and shared every rave review that appeared in the press. Justice, justice shall you pursue. After Heights High, Hal went to Miami University of Ohio, where he was active on campus and felt that he had real friends for the first time in his life. He joined the Alpha Epsilon Pi fraternity, affectionately known in Jewish circles as AE Pi, where he served as president when it received its charter from the university. As a member of the fraternity's first pledge class, Hal earned the nickname the Saint for his ability to listen and respond compassionately to the issues his fraternity brothers shared with him. In what was a somewhat Animal House atmosphere, he maintained friendships with everyone and set a standard for interaction and for community. After college, he went on to law school at Northwestern University, and then with Janet, served in AmeriCorps Vista, Vista meaning Volunteers in Service to America, which was founded by President Lyndon Johnson as a kind of domestic version of the Peace Corps. As a national service program that works to eliminate poverty, it was tailor-made for Hal and afforded him an exemption from serving in the Vietnam War. He and Janet went to Milwaukee for three years, where she worked as a librarian, and Hal worked for an organization whose mission was to release individuals from jail who shouldn't have been there in the first place. He loved the work, and his co-worker liked Hal so much that he tried to persuade him to stay. Cleveland and family were too important to Hal to stay in Milwaukee, so at the end of the 3 years, he and Janet headed home. Hal worked briefly at a law firm before he went off on his own to found Levey and Gruen. As one of the first films to utilize TV ads and public advertising, Hal's face became quite recognizable in Cleveland. Even with the stresses and strains of his work, he enjoyed the sense of community and personal connection that the advertising afforded him. As a personal injury attorney, primarily, his clients trusted him and relied upon him for his honesty, his advocacy, his expertise, and his compassion. His clients returned to him for all their legal needs and sent their relatives, friends, and co-workers to him as well. They loved him because he sought justice for them. For Hal, it wasn't all about the money. It was about his clients and doing right for them. Sometimes, after helping a new client, he would bring them home with him for a meal and a bit of warm hospitality. As smart as he was, and Hal not only looked, but was quite brainy, and as cold and clear-cut as the law could be, Hal never left his heart out of the equation. There is, in fact, in our tradition, an ongoing debate about the relative merits and balance of justice and mercy. There are endless discussions among the rabbis and many conceits that imagine God as erring on the side of harsh justice and being urged to show mercy, or being too lenient with a wrongdoer and being encouraged to show a stricter standard of the law. Hal had no such conflict. While pursuing the best outcome the law could allow for his client, his efforts started with the person, not with the law. The law was always a tool for the benefit of those who deserved redress and restitution, but it was never an end in itself. This was particularly evident after the breakup of Levey and Gruen, when Hal became a sole practitioner and handled a wide variety of cases for friends, family, previous clients, and the referrals they all brought with them. He had endless patience, curiosity, creativity, empathy, and capacity for study and exploration. He helped clients with their estate planning, workers' compensation, intellectual properties, even entertainment law. Most recently, he was helping daughter Sarah to access the medical and workers' compensation benefits to which she is entitled as a result of dealing with long COVID. He never really retired. He couldn't. He could never turn away from a person in need. He could never turn away from the possibility of restoring justice to the life of an injured or disadvantaged party. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and thrive. Hal had an instinct for living and thriving. Despite his early experiences with tortured souls, he had a joie de vivre, a wicked sense of humor that rarely failed him, and that he shared with Janet, a love of being with people he was finally able to realize and actualize, again, encouraged by Janet, but also, even before they met, by his experience at AEPI. Hal was always very close to his family. Whatever else might be going on, he could always find comfort and solace in his family, an extended family. When he was growing up, he was very close with his cousins, Sandra and Paula, the daughters of his mother's sister, Esther, whom they called Aunt Babe. Paula and Hal became especially close over the years, as Hal provided safe harbor and ballast when Paula dealt with all of the vicissitudes of her life, and they shared the vicissitudes of several casino trips together as well. Hal was devoted to every member of his family, with his starting with his parents and sister. He was never able to forgive Northwestern Law School for refusing to reschedule his final exams so that he might visit his seriously ailing mother sooner. She passed away within days of his graduation and his wedding to Janet. Hal loved music and he loved sports, especially the Cleveland Browns most of the time, and the other Cleveland teams. Hal loved going to restaurants. He loved big holiday meals with family and friends gathered in their home. He loved to travel, and he loved to make people laugh. He enjoyed a good political debate and an outing to Thistledown. He loved his work and making an impact on the world. He loved his faith and was devoted to our congregation, where his children were raised and where I always loved to see them and to see him when he would come to Shabbat services from time to time. More than anything else, however, above and beyond anything else, he loved his immediate family, the sun of his universe, Janet, and the brightest lights of both their lives, Harlan, Barry, and Sarah. His happiest moments were with them. In any combination or permutation, he never missed one of Harlan's soccer games, Sarah's softball games, or a theater performance of Barry's. In later years, he and Janet would travel multiple times to New York to see the opening, closing, and a middle performance of one of Barry's productions. He was a vocal supporter when any of his kids was on the field and coached their teams as part of the Beechwood Recreation League. His unfailing support of Harlan's soccer playing helped encourage him to keep advancing, and ultimately to his love of travel that led to his life in Belgium. He took Sarah to Cleveland sports games and encouraged every activity in which she was involved. He supported Barry's interest in the theater, suggested Clarence Darrow in the Scopes trial as the topic for his first writing competition, which he won, and served to inspire him to do more writing. Hal was a creative and thoughtful editor of Barry's work. Hal's family tended to bring out the best in him. Janet is credited with helping to tame his temper and encourage his sociability skills. He would do most anything for his children, including driving Barry all over town to complete his Garbage Pail Kid and Happy Meal toy collections. When Janet first went to work as a librarian, Hal took over the responsibility for the children on Friday nights and Saturdays. They went out to eat on Fridays, went on outings on Saturdays, and he cooked cheesy bagels for them also on Saturdays. These gourmet delicacies consisted of Lender's frozen mini bagels topped with a slice of American cheese cooked in the toaster oven. It was his original creation. He had a notoriously bad sense of direction, but loved to travel. He and Janet traveled from New Orleans to Hawaii and took the family on the Bourbon Trail and to the Finger Lakes. They traveled as a family to Sweden and Denmark, Barcelona, Amsterdam, and Belgium. They went alone to the UK, London, Finland, Berlin, and enjoyed a Baltic cruise. They may have traveled the world, but found worlds in each other. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Hal believed in fairness and right for all, but he may not have expected the overwhelming goodness that characterized his life. With Janet at his side, with three outstanding children who filled him with only pride and delight, he became an emotionally demonstrative person in his later years. Through an effort of will, he became emotionally literate and then helped raise individuals who were likewise expressive and forthright about their feelings. As his children acknowledged, Hal's warmth, sociability, and love of family did not come naturally to him. He wanted these things in his life, so he worked on them and honed his skills. That he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams became apparent when his appreciation for his blessings spilled over into tears of intense feeling. He became a man who was not ashamed of real emotions and demonstrating them. There is a photograph of Hal and Harlan at a family wedding where he is caught in an odd expression as he is trying to hold back tears and express his joy simultaneously. It is a true representation of the emotional richness he brought to his relationships as he continued to grow and become the person he wanted to be. That he succeeded in that quest is testament not only to him but to the love of his life and true partner, Janet. She helped to soften his rough edges, as well as encouraged, supported, and urged the dominance of his better angels. For her part, she thought he was the most lovable and loving, generous and supportive, as well as extremely handsome man. They loved each other with all their hearts and souls, and out of that love, that devotion, that commitment to shared values, ideals, laughter, and finding meaning in their everyday, they created the crowning glory of their lives, their wonderful family, and forged a wide network of friends and relationships. It was most obvious in the holiday celebrations they hosted and adored. As Janet said, "We're holiday people." Every Jewish holiday found their home filled with family and friends, from Erev Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur breakfast, from the Passover Seder, which was always a major event in the Levey household, to the famous annual latke party, which was Brett's most memorable introduction to Sarah's family. Hal proudly made the latkes himself. The potatoes had to be hand-grated in this era of the Cuisinart, with a bit of blood seasoning the batter. He also poured in liberal amounts of crushed vitamin C as his innovation in delaying the browning of the potatoes before they were cooked. The latkes were outstanding, and no Thanksgiving weekend was complete without the Friday party, no matter when Hanukkah might actually arrive. In all of their celebrations, the more people who were included, the more happier Hal became. But Thanksgiving was in a class by itself. Hal had special tables made so that they could accommodate more people and make everyone feel that they were part of the Levey community of loved ones. Hal delighted in welcoming guests, and he delighted in handling the guests. He loved to joke and talk and be goofy and make every person feel special. We are grateful that everyone was here just a few weeks ago with no inkling that we might be in this situation today. Harlan came in from Belgium with Winnie. Barry was here with Michal, and Sarah and Brett were happily present as daughter and High Holy Day Temple partner, an honor Brett particularly enjoyed as he accompanied Hal to services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The presence of Hal's beloved family was ultimate testimony to his special qualities, his remarkable open-mindedness, his non-judgmental acceptance of every human being, his empathetic nature, and his ability to listen, really listen, not only to the words of another, but to the heart that animated the person's words and actions. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and thrive, and occupy the land that the eternal your God is giving you. It is hard to fathom that Hal is no longer with us. Our hearts cry out for him, for his seemingly indomitable presence that raised us all up and made us feel fortunate to share this life with him. Even in our grief, in our profound loss and bewilderment, let us acknowledge that he lived by the precepts that he believed, that he did live and thrive in enduring ways that will continue to uplift and inspire us, and that he occupied a true promised land of his highest aspirations and his dreams come true. Even now, can we not imagine him helping the angels with their needs and heavenly concerns? Zichrono livracha. May his memory be always for blessing. And let us say, Amen. I call now on family friend Rochelle Hecht, who will be followed by Sarah and Brett Pickus, by Barry, by Harlan, to offer their reflections on their beloved friend and father.
Thank you, Cantor Sager. I would like to take this opportunity to honor our beloved friend Hal with some humor and love. His antics were always very entertaining. Our relationship began about 25 years ago with a persistent knock on the Levy's door by me for a special legal request and not taking no for an answer from Hal. And that was how a long-lasting friendship was born. Hal was a man of adventure, an adventurous driver with a comical sense of direction. With Hal at the wheel, you never knew what to expect when you were a passenger in his back seat. There was one time in particular when Hal drove us to a restaurant on Chagrin Boulevard in the midst of heavy snow. He proceeded to park the car in the lot, or so we thought, but instead, we somehow ended up suspended and dangling in the air, caught on a cement block. We literally had to climb and jump out of the car, and Hal had to call for a tow truck. Subsequently, Dan and I insisted that we drive whenever the four of us went out together. Hal and I played many rounds of golf at Highland Golf Course, and I made sure that I drove the cart. Hal was notorious for losing track of his clubs. He would be on the 17th fairway. He would reach into his bag for a 7-iron and realize, oops, I think I might have left it on the 15th green. Of course, we had to drive back to get it, and this pretty much happened every time we played. Hal was a maven, or thought he was, when it came to baseball. Both he and Jan loved the Indians and were ardent fans, loyal as could be. Of course, Hal knew more than manager Terry Francona. He insisted that if he was the manager, the Indians would have won many a World Series. Hal also very much enjoyed arguing with Dan about stats, plays, moves, etc. Of course, Hal was always right, wink, wink. They say that friendships are based on love, respect, and tradition. Our tradition, having Friday night dinners at Beechwood Place, or as we like to refer to them, Shabbos dinners. We started at the food court for many years when our kids were young. We then graduated to eating at Nordstrom when they opened their restaurant. We would usually meet at 6:15, Hal with his back support pillow in tow. Many times his pillow would be forgotten, left behind on the floor, etc., but we always made sure that we had his back, pun intended. Wanda, Luis, and Maria became regulars, as did other friends for a time, but the last 15 years plus or so, it was the 7 of us, the Leveys, the Hechts, and the Alvarezes, until the latter moved out of state. We were icons treated like royalty. The waitstaff at Nordstrom would make sure to reserve our table for us. If any of the children visited, Harlan, Barry, Ashley, and Andrew from out of town, they would join us. And occasionally, Sarah and Brett would as well. We always looked forward to Friday nights when we could unwind and share stories of the previous week. Unfortunately, our dinners were suspended due to COVID over the last 2 years, but we are thankful that we did reprise our Friday night dates last summer. I could go on and mention many more stories, but we would be here all day, so I will end with this sentiment. My nickname for Hal was Halzor. Halzor, rest in peace. We will miss you. You left us way too soon. And I want you to know, Hal Zor, I really tried very hard to find you a Wyoming license plate. Thank you.
Dad, I'm so lucky to have you as my father. You love to make people laugh with your funny and sometimes corny jokes. The most memorable one being the escargot joke. A snail drives his car into a car dealership asking for an S decal on both sides of the car. The dealer asked, "Why the S?" The snail said, "So when people see me drive by, they say, 'Look at the escargot.'" Of course, you were being too descriptive every time you said that joke, like what kind of car it was, how you earned enough money to pay for it, and so on and so on. I also appreciated how helpful you were to me. As I grew up, you were my brush. You liked running your fingers through my hair, pulling out the knots. Recently, you even took that to a next level by taking me to my numerous doctor's appointments and physical therapies for my post-COVID syndrome. I love you and will miss you very much. Thank you for being a wonderful father.
Okay, as Canner Sager said, I remember first time I met Hal back in '02. He would always say "ought." I was picking Sarah up. This is when we started dating. He was making his famous latkes, which, as I said, we got to enjoy every year. Almost always the Friday after Thanksgiving. I loved Hal's latkes, his warmth, his sense of humor, all his many dad jokes, and his good advice. In his toast at our wedding in '05, his words of wisdom were for us to talk, listen, and respect each other. We have made sure to honor him and each other by doing these things every day. We love you. We'll miss you, Hal. Rest in heaven.
First, I just want to acknowledge how much love and support we all feel in the family, not just here in the chapel today, but from everyone who's joining us from afar. So I have been cataloging Dad's office, and I'd just like to share this partial inventory. On his desktop, marble drink coasters with vintage golf illustrations. On his chair, a lumbar pillow. In his email, a daily stream of jokes from his college friend Bob, rather different from the escargot joke, and none of which I will be reading. In his most played list on iTunes, instrumental renditions of movie songs, then songs by Carly Simon, Linda Ronstadt, Billy Joel, and Liza Minnelli. In a file drawer, a TV advertising contract with WUAB, a draft letter to the editor decrying a mayoral candidate, a lifetime service contract with Sears for the treadmill he ran on daily since his diabetes diagnosis, only taking a break when I visited the house so he wouldn't stink up my old room. In another file drawer, a folder of precious family documents, including a letter from traveling salesman Ralph Levey to a coworker named Helen, dated December 9th, 1928, and signed your sincere friend Ralph. A DVD conversion of footage from a Glickman, Friedman, Levy and Rosenfeld gathering from December of 1967, and a 1994 letter to Iris Levy from the cousin Mauricio she had tracked down in Sao Paulo. In yet another file drawer, because there are a lot of file drawers, there are folders of vacation itineraries, including, as Kenneth Sager mentioned, Scandinavia, Iceland, and the Baltic-Russian cruise, an Alaskan cruise, many cruises, trips to the Finger Lakes wineries and Ohio wineries, for the Chicago Art Fair and the Dallas Art Fair, casino cards from Club Majestic, Harrah's, and the MGM Grand, and in an untitled folder, notes for a dream trip to find Mom the best place to see the Northern Lights. On a bookshelf, printouts of all my play scripts with his suggested edits, Harlan's bound thesis from Maastricht University, and Sarah's wedding album. On a second bookshelf, because there are also lots of bookshelves, a worksheet of 2021 holiday tips for his hairdresser, newspaper and mail delivery people, and the wait staffs at all the local restaurants. On a tabletop, unsent holiday cards to his cousin Paula and friends Wanda and Luis. In scattered folders on his desk, printed concert schedules and course syllabi for adult ed classes on the golden age of pop, the golden age of musicals, and a catalog of upcoming classes, including one he starred, that will explore whether Alexander Hamilton was Jewish. A folder called Jan, with order confirmations for Atkins bars and footpads. A folder called Harlan, with printed reviews of his new gallery. And a folder of his last great case, his crusade to get Sarah treatment for long COVID. Also on his desk, 2 Don Quixote figures that I now realize were the inspiration for me to frame a Don Quixote poster in my first grown-up apartment, and a thriving fiddly fig plant that I sent him for Father's Day, with a note still in it that reads, "This is a small version of the giant plant in my kitchen. We can keep them alive together." In one last file drawer, a folder called Wills, with a helpful list of probate lawyers to contact, along with a burn list of lawyers to absolutely not contact. And finally, on one more bookshelf, a memento of his proud charter contribution to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a copy of the engraved brick he bought for the plaza, and it reads, Hal, Jan, Harlan, Barry, Sarah, forever rock and roll.
Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. I just have a very short quote from Cornel West that I would like to borrow and read to my father. And it goes, I am who I am because somebody loved me, somebody cared for me, and somebody attended to me. And I'll never, ever forget it. And I say that to my mother, too. We've been very, very blessed. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for those beautiful, stirring, evocative tributes to a very special man. Oh God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow laden for consolation. Oh God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. Please rise. El male rachamim shochen bamromim ametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im gedoshim utehorim kizorakia Mazirim et nishmat Aryeh ben Rachmiel ben Shalach leolamo Bal harachamim yashtereu b'setek navav leolamim V'yisru chaim et nishmato Adonai u'nachalato v'yanuach l'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Harold, our Hal Levey, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. The family and those who wish will now proceed in procession to Mayfield Cemetery, and there will be a Zoom Shiva this afternoon beginning at 5 o'clock.